In a culture of opposing opinions and challenging times, how do you get your head above water and get a breath of fresh air? You look for hope. You look for answers. And we shift from silos of segregation to social engagement in a quest for solutions. Stop talking about what the problem is and let's discuss how to fix it. Join us now as America Connects with your host, Rob Dalton.
Hey, hello everybody. Welcome to America Next. I just happen to be Rob Dalton, your loyal host. I'm here for every episode. It is all about me, but it's also about you, America. And welcome again to America Connects. It's nice to have you with us. We are here today to talk about what we like to talk about, and that's things you need to know as a consumer, as a family person, as a member of this world and society. And we're always trying to fix not everything, but one show at a time. We're simply looking for solutions and answers and how to resolve some of the problems. So instead of just talking about everything we talk about in the world and like regular talk shows, we try and focus in on just one topic each show. And today we're going to talk about bullies. Bullying is not just for kids anymore. So many of us think in our lives it's a big deal in high school and even elementary school and junior high schools. We made a big issue of it because it's a huge deal with kids' self-esteems and things in school, but we don't often talk about bullies in our adult life. So today's show, bullying is not just for kids anymore. That's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the bullies in our lives. We're going to talk about how to actually realize that's what they are, how to understand that they're in our lives in different capacities, how they are, and sometimes our bullies are in our families. Sometimes a bully may be a neighbor. We even have a bully sometimes in our circle of close friends. They're everywhere. Sometimes they're the HOA in your neighborhood, but they're in our world. They're sometimes a coworker, but not necessarily a boss or a supervisor. Sometimes it's just a coworker, somebody in your office. They're men, they're women, they're all over our adult world. And bullies happen outside of schools. In the wake of the presidential debates and 4 years of President Trump in action, we've seen bullying at a very high level. This is roughly my opinion. But with those actions, he's been very productive in getting some things done in the world that other presidents have not, who have taken a softer approach. I think putting a label on a bully in your life is what's important. I've got a couple very special guests on the show today, and we were talking pre-taping that sometimes just having a person in your life that is a bully, if it's a family member or a coworker or a close friend, that sometimes just putting that label that they are a bully and realizing that can kind of solve can kind of close that gap between you and that person. We internalize, I think, in my opinion, but we'll talk to the experts, that sometimes we internalize our feelings and sometimes we take self-blame for some of the reactions from other people. But really, if the person is sometimes just a bully, putting a label on that makes it easier to understand that, oh, they're just being that way because they're that way, especially if it's a family member. You don't have to judge them. Just realize maybe that's what they are. And our experts, we have two people today that are going to talk about that. Our guests are going to be Tim Hart, who's a president and CEO of leading CEO. And we also have Dr. Jane Adams. She's in Seattle. We'll get to her as well. But those are going to be our experts and our panel members today that are really going to be able to dive a little bit deeper into this situation. So remember, it's not up to you to change a bully. The leopard's got its spots. You can't change the spots. It's how we react to people that makes and changes us. And I think this is a way where maybe we can just help understand that sometimes that's just the way people are, and it's just the way people are. So join me today on American X as we discuss bullying, how it's not just for kids anymore. So thank you for being a part of the show. It's nice to have you with us, and we hope you learned something useful, because open up your scope a little bit and realize that some people, maybe that's just what they are, and it's okay that that's what they are. We just have to accept them for the way they are. And sometimes that makes us feel better in doing so. Our two guests, like I said, Mr. Tim Hart is coming on soon, and after him will be Jane Adams, Dr. Jane Adams. And we have a couple Zoom guests at the end who actually have a few anecdotal stories and real life examples of bullies in their lives. And I think it might be something we all can relate to. So first, let me introduce Mr. Tim Hart. Say hello, Tim.
Hello.
Tim, let me give you, I'm fine. Thank you for joining us here on America Connect. Tim Hart is the president and CEO of A Leading CEO, the name of the company, a coaching and training presentations company there in Beverly Hills, California. Is that right? That's where you are?
Yes.
Good. His expertise is in the key areas of CEO and executive coaching and training, as well as communication and presentation skills training. So, Tim, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
So, at a very high level, you work with executives at a very high level, and
Yes.
and some less than high levels, but a lot of your training. How does bullying come into play in the corporate world that you deal with?
It comes into play a lot. I get called by board of directors and other companies to come in and work with their CEOs because there are a lot of CEO bullies. And once they're identified, you have to go in and work with them because a lot of times with bullying, they don't realize what they're doing. And when you're at that level, it's very difficult for people to challenge them on that.
True.
So that's a big problem.
They're the top of the pyramid, sure.
Exactly. And people don't go around saying you're a bully, but a lot of times they are. And it depends on the type of company too. I've seen it in a lot of different companies, but it's really terrible for the morale in the company and certainly for individuals.
Okay.
Personally, I think that bullying starts at home. Either you've been bullied by your parents or as a kid or by your brothers and sisters, but as you grow up, it's all about self-esteem. And if you're bullied when you're a kid, your self-esteem is really hurt. And I find that people, even at the high level, when I dig into their backgrounds, when I'm doing coaching, they were bullied as kids.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or they're in a marriage and their marriage partner is bullying them. So it plays out in the workplace, which is fascinating. So it's really a problem in a lot of ways. But the thing that probably I'm most concerned about is cyberbullying and what's happening to the kids today.
Now, are we okay? I was going to say, I heard you mention cyberbullying, and I know that's a deal in high school or in school grade age, because they're new to the social media and they're very fragile. Do you see much of that going on in the adult world?
Cyberbullying, I haven't seen that as much. No,
it came up, but I wanted to clarify that.
But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. That's
sure.
Sort of under the radar, I'm sure, because there are probably people that bully people in other departments, things like that. But I don't know.
You do know it's an issue in grade schools.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a big danger because kids, when they're bullied, they really internalize all of that. And it's really a shame because it's not about what's happening to them. It's what other people are doing. And bullies, generally speaking, have no empathy. And when you have no empathy for kids, for example, other kids, you'll do things to them to make yourself feel better or more powerful.
I've never thought of that. Bullies don't traditionally have empathy for others.
No, they don't. Huh. It's a missing factor, which if you think about it, you mentioned the person running this country. We always talk about the fact there's no empathy there, and there really isn't. You have to have empathy for people. And if you don't have it, it's really easy to bully them because you can't put yourself in their place. And from an empathy perspective, what you want to do is put yourself in their place.
Absolutely. Most of us do.
They won't. Now, the other thing on the opposite side of that is sympathy. I mean, sympathy is not going to help you. Empathy, you need to have that with people. I mean, they can give you sympathy if you're being bullied, but that's not going to change anything for you.
I'm going to dial in on that element the next time I run across a couple in my world. Because having been planning this show for a couple of weeks, my radar's been on, so to speak, but I'm going to tune in that radar a little bit more and look at that empathy element. You mentioned, the gentleman at the top here in the United States, but I'm going to tap into that and I'm going to validate it through my own experiences, of course, and judgments. But that's a great point, Tim. Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
I failed to realize that most bullies had been bullied themselves.
Yeah. That's usually, that's what I said, it starts at home. Usually they've been bullied at home either by their brothers and sisters or even their parents. They watch their parents bully other people. So if you learn those things when you're growing up,
by example, sure.
It's a tool. It's a tool. I can use that tool to bully the kids in school because remember, it's all about power. So kids want to have power over other kids. But the sad part about this is that the bullies end up getting into trouble as much as the people being bullied, because the bullies end up as delinquents. They end up all kinds of crazy things happening in their lives. And they don't realize that when they're doing it, but they're setting a trend for how their life is going to go. And the people that are bullied, the thing that I emphasize in everything that I do is self-esteem. You've got to build your self-esteem. It has to be rock solid. Because if you've got good self-esteem, people can't really get through to you.
It bounces off. It's like Teflon.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is self-talk. When you're bullied, you end up talking to yourself and saying, degrading yourself. And that's the last thing you should be doing. You really have to check your self-talk, no matter what you do in life. Watch your self-talk. I mean, we talk to ourselves at 70,000 words per day. That's a lot. And if you're telling yourself constantly you're not good enough and this isn't happening for you, change that. If you change that up to a very positive self-talk, that alone can make people feel better.
Yeah, because that can, if you're not careful, those thoughts can become your reality.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And bullies tend to prey on people that are weak. And what weakness shows, if you don't have high self-esteem, that's the weakness they go after. So,
yeah, they're easy targets.
Very easy.
Yeah. And once they know they can, they'll come back.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I do know of, you mentioned at home, I do know of one person in my world, and I've known this for a while, that he's a wonderful gentleman, but when his wife gets really actively bullying at home, he turns around and comes to work and is a bully. It's like he's lashing out to the only audience that he can.
You move it.
Yes. Yeah. You pack it up and move it. So there's truth in a lot. I recognize a lot of the truths in what you shared, Tim. So thank you very much. That's good information. Thank you. I want to bring you back onto the show. So you able to stick around for a while?
Other things we can talk about.
Good. Tim, really good information. Thank you. I'm going to move on to our next guest, Dr. Jane Adams. Hello, Dr. Jane.
Hi, Rob.
And thanks for being a part of America Connects. I've got some good information on you. So now you're up in Seattle, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Jane is a writer and a social psychologist whose recent books, essays, and columns focus on intergenerational relationships. I found that interesting when we looked at this because we do talk about, what we're going to talk about today is how some of the bullies are in our own families. A couple of your books from Sex and the Single Parent back in the 70s. And then I'm Still Your Mother, you wrote in the 80s. And then When Our Grown Up Kids Disappoint Us, you wrote a decade later. And you've been interviewing parents and their young and adult offspring and working those findings into regular columns for Psychology Today. So thank you again for being part of the show. And I'm thrilled to have you.
Thank you for having me.
And there are bullies in all sorts of fashions in our world. We'd heard from Tim, who talked about it in the corporate world. What would you like to add?
I want to comment on what Tim said.
Please do.
While I believe that most bullies are lacking in empathy, I think that what's really going on is that they are suffused with fear and they're projecting the fear of their own vulnerabilities onto other people who experience it as being bullied. I mean, it's kind of like a spare parts thing. I give you the feelings of my own that I can't handle, and you take them. And so bullies at base are motivated, I think, by their own insecurities. I think clearly our president is a perfect example of that. And they find very willing victims who are able to kind of internalize the fear that the bullies are projecting and respond to it by cowering, by doing what they say. We see a lot of this absolutely in families. I mean, siblings are probably the earliest bullies in our lives, older siblings versus
yes.
And what the fear they're operating out of is, I'm going to be replaced, or I have been replaced in my parents' affections by this person. And it's not true to say that they don't feel empathy. They do, they just can't handle it, which is why they have to project it elsewhere.
Sure.
There's a lot of intergenerational bullying that goes on with parents and children. It's less bullying than it is a power differential. And with adult children and their parents, the bullying is two ways. I have a lot of clients who complain a lot about how their grown kids bully them. Often they're mistaking bullying for their kids' concern, and kids are taking advantage of the mutuality and the power differential to tell their parents what they're concerned about, whether it's how can you go out and run around? Don't you know there's a epidemic going on? And other times it's the other way around. It's parents bullying young adult children who seem to have walked away from that power differential that ruled the roost for a long, long time. But it's very typical. It's more typical probably of adult children bullying their parents than it is of parents bullying their young children, or the young adult children. What those parents tend to do is not to bully, but to continually try to right the power differential and get it back to where it used to be when they ruled the roost and their words went. But kids have a way of growing up and away and making their own decisions, and often can't be bullied by their parents' disapproval. In adult relationships, bullying is more of a boundary invasion.
I can see that.
It is at other times. When you tell me what to do, you're intruding on my autonomy, on my boundary. You're losing track of where you end and I begin. And the best way to deal with a boundary invasion, whether it's bullying or something else, is to call it out. To say, not you're bullying me, but I feel really bullied by you.
Back to feelings. Sure. Yeah. Using your feelings.
Yeah. I mean, as therapists, we always say operate from your feelings rather than labeling other people's feelings. However, when it's an ongoing boundary invasion, what you really have to do is say, this is a boundary invasion. I feel invaded. I feel trespassed upon, and I want you to stop. And when you call out any kind of behavior, if you don't provide consequences for the failure to stop it, then you're just nagging. I mean, the difference between setting a boundary and nagging is that one has consequences and the other doesn't.
Does not. Sure. I can see what you're talking about, how the adults who feel like they're being bullied by their children now as older adults, that is a boundary invasion. And I can see how that would be misinterpreted because the kids are concerned, but I can see how that would come off that way. I do.
Yeah. And I think the way to respond to it the first time is lovingly to say, I know that you're saying this because it's for my own good, or you believe it's for my own good. But, I'm a grown up too. I've been one longer than you have. And I'm making decisions that you may not always agree with, but they're my decisions.
Sure.
And if there are good reasons that you want me to listen to about why I should make a different decision, I'm willing to hear them, but I'm still going to make my own decision.
Sure. Yeah. And give them, one thing I do with my kids who are older now is, I give you the right to have your opinion.
Yes,
absolutely.
As they say in the media, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but only one person is entitled to facts.
Right.
And if the fact is, Mom, you're going out, you're running around, I'm afraid you're going to get COVID, and I really worry about you. All you can do is express your thanks that they worry about you and are concerned about you. Reassure them that you're taking the precautions that you think are wise and sensible, and go about your business. But to not call out a boundary invasion, to not say, for instance, a typical comment that I come up with for my clients a lot is parents telling kids who to marry, what to eat, what to do, how to raise their kids is a big one.
It's a big one.
And unless you say, Mom, if you don't stop talking about my daughter's weight, I'm going to not allow you to see her again. And the next time she does it, stop allowing your granddaughter to spend time with the grandmother. It will stop. It's not a threat. It's a consequence.
Now, let me say, is there, and this is a very general question, but is there somewhere in a relationship where the parents are bullying to the kids and perceived bullying to where that flips all of a sudden, and now the kids feel the parents feel they're being bullied by the kids? Is there like in talking about intergenerational, is there an age, or is there somewhere in life where that tends to flip like that?
Well, I don't think there's an age as much as there is a stage of autonomy. Maturity means that you can make your own decisions. We make our own decisions without fear of whether our parents will approve of them or not. And once you get over that concern about whether your parents approve of you, you're pretty much bully proof.
It's true. Yeah. Their concerns don't matter as much.
That's right. It's your concerns and your issues that are preeminent. And for each of us, that's true. Doesn't mean that you don't take theirs into consideration. But if you really are going to make your own decisions regardless of whether your parents approve of not or not, you're pretty bully proof. You may not change their behavior, but you won't internalize it.
Yeah. Does that tie into self-esteem as well, or just confidence?
I don't know that it's self-esteem as much as, what we call being comfortable in your own skin.
Self-awareness. Yeah.
Being certain of your own decisions. If you are wavering about a decision and your parents are trying to push you one way or another, you may be more prone to accepting their bullying or accepting their opinion.
Right.
So it should force you to reevaluate the position you're taking and decide whether it's a valid one or not.
Yeah, to pick a side of the fence. So
yeah.
Makes sense. That great points. Tim, do you have any complimentary?
No, I love what you said. I agree with all of it. One of the things I wanted to add is that, a lot of it is taking things personally. We always go through life taking everything personally. And if we can teach people not to do that, even with kids, don't take everything so personally, that could really help us, because we internalize that because it's like, you're doing this to me. And in a lot of ways, we're allowing it because, it's just happening. And I think if you stop taking things personally, it helps a lot. The other thing I wanted to mention about what you're saying is that when you look at adults and how they respond in the intergenerational portion of this, I have a question for you. How would you feel if somebody said to me or said to you, "You're hurting me"? Would that be something that you would say to them to get them to really realize what they're doing, and that it's not just, "Please stop doing this to me," and stop that behavior, but just give them an idea of what that's making you feel?
I think giving them a specific example of how it makes you feel, rather than the kind of general comment of "you're hurting me," is, it feels as though you're disrespecting my opinion. Mm-hmm. It feels as though you don't value what I say. It feels as though this is a personal attack rather than a general one. When we talk about not taking it personally. When you're talking to one other person and they're talking to you, it's hard not to take it personally.
When it's one-on-one,
it is in fact very personal.
Especially when it comes to family.
Absolutely.
It gets personal with family quick.
Yeah, it does. It does. But I feel like sometimes if we can put up a little bit of a wall in terms of what I'm going to take personally, what I'm not going to take personally.
That's the boundary. That really is the boundary. What do we let in?
Yeah, and what do you let into your life, and what not? What don't you let in?
I think it's really important to cultivate boundary flexibility. I compare boundaries to a fence. It's either chicken wire where you can see through it, or it's shutters that you can close at will. Okay. And the ability to close those shutters, to turn off outside influence, is a really important function of boundary intelligence.
I wanted to bring in some of our Zoom callers, some of our other guests as well, and listen to some of their stories and anecdotes. And I'll see if my producers have anyone in the waiting room or on hold to do that. But in the meantime, I wanted to just let everyone know, Tim Hart, you're up in Los Angeles. I know most of the people that are listening have been here through the whole show. And you are a corporate trainer, right. Just to put it mildly. And Dr. Jane Addams with Psychology Today, but multiple books authored as well. I'm glad y'all are in on our panel today to discuss this. It's bullying isn't just for kids anymore. They're everywhere in our world. And I wanted to bring in a few of our Zoom calls to get some of those stories. Again, the topic today is bullying. It's not just for kids anymore. And reintroducing the topic is simple enough to say that there are people in our world as adults where we get bullied. And there are bullies in our lives. And because we tend to accept people for who they are and what they are, no matter the role in our lives, we sometimes take that internally. And instead of labeling people for what they are and making it easier to cope, sometimes we just don't understand that they are sometimes just being bullies, and putting a label on it makes it easier for us sometimes to cope with that. Now, we had two guests earlier in the show, Tim Hart, who's a president and CEO of Leading CEO. It's basically a corporate trader who deals with the corporate world, a lot of CEOs. And then our next other guest was Dr. Jane Addams, who works with Psychology Today. She's out of Seattle, a multiple book publisher, author, and her stuff can be found on Amazon as well. That's Dr. Jane Addams, who had some wonderful commentary as well. It's not always the parents. Sometimes the parents feel like they're being bullied by the kids. And we brought up earlier in the show about boundary invasions. We're going to get into a few anecdotal elements here. I wanted to bring in our first Zoom caller, Mr. Michael Penebianco. Michael's with us today, and we're going to see what he has to say, and maybe a real life example of Michael's life where a bully has been or is or was in his life. Hello, Michael. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Rob. It's great to be here, and it's a very near and dear topic to my heart. My journey with bullying, I didn't actually experience it myself until well into my adult years.
Okay.
But I had worked after 9/11, gotten into aviation safety and security, dealing with terrorism and things like that through a career of flying airplanes. And through that, reverse engineered myself into a position where I was coaching and teaching self-defense and worked with kids that were bullied in school. And very quickly in working with those kids in coaching, you meet the parents that are like, wow, this is actually happening to me at work. You know, the same.
They identified it. Okay.
Yeah, they literally, they connected. And when they were trying to build a bridge to their child to help their child deal with it, they very quickly realized that they were going through it themselves.
Wow.
So I mean, it was just like light bulb moments, case after case after case. And as I went on, got to working with the Dale Carnegie organization and looked at organizational health and things that, you know, what leads to some of these dysfunctional behaviors making their way into your daily work and life, and finding out how many adults, you know, like 75% of adults have either seen it or experienced it in the workplace bullying issue. And having been with two particular nonprofits and one for-profit organization, the bully was sitting at the top. So the skill sets, you know, it's a chess game for somebody as an adult. And for me, it was not being in the position of power, but having to try to deal with a bully that I had to deal with myself, as well as I would call it organizational terrorism that would come with that. Okay. So, you know, people get into jobs that they may not be able to step aside and just, you know, laterally move to another job, or to quit because it's just not, it's not a fit, or the abuse just gets to be so much. But when you look at the dollars lost alone, you'd think that more organizations would want to be good about dealing with that type of individual in their organization. Unfortunately, sometimes it was at the very top. And in my case, that combat led to my departure. And so it's a very, very dear topic to me. And having spent most of my life teaching others to have experienced it after all of the things that I have taught other people was actually, you know, you come home and scratch your head and talk to your wife and you're like, you know, I think this is this is what's happening to me. I'm being gaslit. I'm being bullied. I've been assassinated via reply all. It's, you know, the worst days of your life sometimes are when you're driving home knowing that your work doesn't matter anymore, and that, you know, your position is no longer meaningful due to the actions of another person. So, you know, leading forward and thriving, that's how I'm wired. And that's the way I've chosen to go from this and take that experience, all the things that I've taught other people and the experience that I've had myself, and turn that into a coaching path forward. So that's my personal connection to it.
Yeah. So you've seen it. I think real quick as a recap, but just the one thing that I found, that the patterns are the same, whether you're adult or a child.
Yes.
Yeah. And so we said in the corporate world, we tend to accept them.
Yeah.
But when you stand back and identify them, label them, you realize, wow, you're a victim as well. Thank you, Michael. I'm going to move on. Mr. Chuck Herrick. Hello, Chuck.
Good afternoon. How are you, Rob?
Welcome to America Connects.
Thank you. So I guess my journey started, when I was young, I was in a wheelchair. So I've had this my entire life. But as an adult, I guess the biggest case I had, and again, it goes back to what was said previously, it's about a lot of people in power.
Yeah.
So I practiced law for many years, and the firm that I was at, one of the partners was the biggest bully that I had ever seen. I mean, even worse than when I was a kid. I don't know if it's something about the practice of law and the way that we're combative.
Okay.
And I think there's a way to practice where our clients have issues, but as attorneys, we shouldn't. We should treat each other civilly and with respect. But my old boss was just one who, one of the things he loved to do is you could not send a motion to the other side or any notification until 5 o'clock on Friday.
Wow.
Now it's just a minor microaggression, but when he would get into court, I remember we were in a hearing once, and the other side just dominated. They had the facts, they had the law.
Yeah.
And sometimes you get that as a client.
Scale
You get
was
a
tipping
client who
heavily
just
that
isn't
way.
the best.
Yeah.
And the other attorney was very nice. I was the one who dealt with him, and I know it wasn't going well. So my partner wanted to come and be the one to argue it.
Okay.
When it was ruled against us in the motion, the other attorney came up and started talking with me. My partner came up over my shoulder and got in the other guy's face and was, why do we have to be like this?
Yeah.
This isn't the way it should be. I mean, it's not, we shouldn't have to bully the other side and try to use something and lord over them. It just isn't the way to go. I mean, there are too many things, if we could weed that out, that's just something that breeds contempt in others.
Yes.
And I think it's short-sighted, because what would happen is then I would find out that, oh, you're with that guy. And all of a sudden your business starts drying up because
there's an association factor. Yeah.
Yeah. They get the reputation and the kind of tax law, which is a small niche area.
Yeah.
Especially in Dallas. And if you become associated with that, all of a sudden people say, you're with that firm, you must be one of them.
Yeah.
And it's just, no matter what you can do.
Yeah.
I mean, it finally led to the firm imploding and I went somewhere else, but I was not even certain how to deal with it. I would go talk to the other partner and say, this is what's going on. He knew it was going on, but it was just, I can't understand. I mean, as a kid, I can understand why I got picked on in a wheelchair. I was different.
Yeah.
But as we get
later
older
in the corporate world, like we were saying earlier, in the corporate world, it repeated itself at a much higher level. And it's too bad.
Maybe there was some insecurity that he had. He always wanted to win. He wanted to do this. He used to brag. I remember when I started, we're all about family. And then you'd start talking with him. Well, I took one day off in 5 years, and that was Christmas Day.
Yeah.
That's not the kind of life. And that's the kind of things that I've seen, especially in the legal world. And you start to deal with that. And it's not healthy. I think it just creates tension. It creates a bad, just the reputation that you have. Yeah. It's something that really can't be repaired once that's there.
Bad energy.
Well,
Thank you, Chuck. I appreciate your personal insights. I appreciate the personal insights.
The law is essentially an adversarial system that sets up, it sets up bullying.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I still think maybe I'm old school. Yes, we're adversarial, but our clients have the issue. Us as attorneys should still be able to go out and be civil to one another, because there might be a time where this guy is an adversary today, but the next time, the way cases go, he might be on your side. He might be a co-counsel because you might have some big client.
Yep.
And if he respects you, they might bring it to you.
Yep.
To where you'll co-counsel with them. Hey, we can't handle this, or you have this expertise.
Don't burn a bridge.
New client.
Yeah. Don't burn a bridge.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
I'm Mr. Maurice Patrick Duncan Jr. Welcome to America Connects. Hi.
How you guys doing? You can call me Mo Duncan for short.
Mo Doctor. That is much shorter.
Yeah.
Take a deep breath for Mo Doctor. Tell what's your experience, Mo Doc? What's your experience with bullies?
Well, first of all, I would say, it all, like with everybody else, it all kicked off when we were kids, going through school or whatnot, preschool or whatnot. And, it's always been the bigger kid that feel like, okay, I'm the biggest guy. I could do whatever, I want to. And then, he makes a habit of it. But I mean, if you transcend it, it's just, honestly, I think it's nature in its own, from like from the dinosaur age, the T-Rex bullying all the other dinosaurs. And then it transcends from the animal kingdom, the big lion ends up bullying all the other lions or whatnot. And it comes from us in particular. Now, I would honestly say I've never been a big fan of, the victim mentality of it, because the environment that I came from, and like, with my father, he's always trained me to the point where, like, if anybody, regardless of how big he is, if he step to you and try to bully you, you better make sure you, give him the same treatment. And to handle your bullying, basically, you got to bully him back, because
hold up a mirror. Yeah,
exactly. Because the thing is, if if he does that to you, and you continually have your fear adrenaline control you, where you just let him continue to do it, everybody's going to continue to get on and do it time and time again. So those type of training methods from as a child basically kind of grew me up to the point where, like, look, in the real world, people are going to try you. So, if somebody hits you, you make sure you hit them back, not to the point where you're trying to be a bully, but key word is defense. You want to defend yourself because you love yourself enough that you'll never let nobody do anything or put you in harm's way. And then once you give them the same energy that they extended back to you, they have a common sense to be like, you know what? I don't want nothing with that dude.
They remember. Sure. They remember. Yeah.
So that's basically, to me on the genealogy part of it, it's always just been to the point
early
where,
training.
Like, thanks to my family for doing that. So I've always just been upfront when it comes to that. Never let nobody do that.
Yeah. Good. That's thank you, Maurice. Oh, I'm sorry. Mo Duncan.
Mo Duncan.
That's right. Good. Well, thank you for being a part of America Connects. We may come back around. My next guest is Heather Pierce. Heather, are you around and able
I'm around.
Details?
I'm here.
Hi, thank you for joining America Connects. Tell me about your experiences.
Mine is kind of the opposite. I mean, I've listened to a little bit of everybody, and for me, I could say that the teenage years, it was being bullied and stuff, but really it was the opposite. I guess you could say I belonged, or I hung out more with the popular crowd, but I didn't like being in cliques. And so I tended to stay away from them. And whenever I would try to be friends with everybody, even what they called, the nerds, they wouldn't let me in because I was too popular. And that was a form of bullying, in my opinion, because I had friends. But that was like, no big deal. I got over that. But I found that as I got older and, finished college and worked my way up pretty quickly in the education, it was a lot of resentment. Like I had a lot of more females more than anything. Just stabbing behind the back. And I was passed over 4 different times for a position that I knew I was, fully capable of. And it was because of the director of special ed at that time and I were good friends. And so I got bullied a lot for the way I looked, she's to this, she's to that. She knows these important people. She's the part of a clique kind of thing. And I'm really not. I'm a
like
hard worker.
The mean girl syndrome, even as an adult?
Basically, yes. Okay. And so I just kind of always took it like, you know what, it's their problem, it's not mine. They don't know that I'm putting 14, hours a week in at work and working till 10 midnight at night to get to where I am. And I've always had a soft spot, that 20 years, in special ed and working with kids with autism. I was their advocate, and then I would find myself having to defend me. But right now, I'm dealing with my own journey with being bullied by family, particularly parents and my own children. And that's a whole new realm right now with me.
It's very personal. We were talking with Dr. Jane earlier about the complexities of doing it with family, because it can be very personal very quickly.
Yes. But I mean, I'm wanting to talk about it because if it can help others, and I'm all for it. It's like things aren't really great. My kids don't want to talk to me. I've literally been ghosted by them, and I don't know why. I think a lot of it has to do with, the other side in terms of the ex and that new family. Yeah. But I just, sat them down one day and said, if you're going to choose to treat me this way, then I'm going to choose to remove myself from, your life until you're ready to treat me with respect.
Dr. Jane had mentioned again, setting boundaries and boundary invasions. So yeah, that's a real life example of Dr. Jane's advice. So good. Thank you so much. I'm glad I think that those real life things are important, because everyone tries to attach themselves to this type of topic in a very personal way. How does it affect me, or how am I like that? And I thought all of our stories, including yours, Heather, was very poignant and kind of drew that around. So thank you for the vulnerability of sharing too.
I don't want anybody to, have to feel like they have to fight fire with fire. It's like you can still in your heart do the right thing.
Again, Heather, I wanted to thank you for that. I want to bring in our guests, Mr. Tim Hart.
Well, first of all, thanks to everybody that had their stories. I think that's great. And I was listening to you, Heather, with kids. That's a tough one because even though we want to talk to them and try to get some sense out of all this, it's very difficult to get them to sit down and do that. And you might have experienced that.
Oh, yes.
So I wanted to ask you, what have you done in terms of trying to communicate? Because it's all about communication. If the kids aren't going to communicate.
I've let them have their voice because they're 8 years apart. So, you know, one's 25 and one's 18. But I let them have their voice, but I maintain the boundaries as well, that there will be respect. And the minute they don't show respect, then I tell them that we're just going to table it until they're ready to talk, you know, respectfully. And I've let them speak, but what they have to say makes really no sense to me, but I have to honor whatever it is that they feel. So they're in counseling right now. So I'm not going to stifle what they believe. I just hope that they'll outgrow it.
When you say, Heather, when you say I've let them have their voice, what I don't hear, and maybe I'm just not listening carefully, is I'm listening to what they're saying and taking it in and trying to make sense of it.
Yes.
Okay.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, she's Dr. Jane. So
yes. That's perfect. Yes.
Dr. Jane, anything about any of the commentary you heard from our Zoom callers?
Well, I think probably my heart is with Heather's because I deal with parents of adult children and difficulties in communicating a lot. And, you know, there's a kind of epidemic of estrangement going on. And wherever you can nip it in the bud, I think it's important to do that. There is a time at 18 and I guess 26 where they're trying to be independent of their need for you. And sometimes it's important to look at their behavior in terms of, you know, a bird pecking its way out of the egg, because that's really what they're doing, and you're getting the pecks.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's important to take in what they say, to let them have their say, and to really, I mean, of course you will take it personally, but to let it wash over you sometimes. I mean, they will grow up, and I think that setting hard and fast rules of I'm not going to talk to you unless you're respectful to me, without telling them precisely what respectful means. Respectful may mean I am listening to your opinion and to your facts. I'd like you to listen to mine also. Or if it's just you can't talk to me that way, what way are you talking about? You can't talk to me as though my opinions don't matter, as though everything I've told you is crap. I mean, you really have to be specific when you talk about my kids are disrespecting me. Because sometimes expressing an opinion is different from disrespecting.
I totally agree. And I have done what you said, because I've gone through mediation with them per their request, counseling per their request. And so we learned, you know, how to turn take and, you know, honor each other's time and stuff. And so, yeah, I do validate what they say, and then they validate what I say, and we go from there. But it's not a demanding, you know, you're going to respect me or else.
Okay.
Thank you. Tim, I wanted to bring you back because those two were Chuck Panebianco, who experienced bullying later in life, as well as Chuck, who a wheelchair all of his life, but didn't really, it didn't change bullying until later in the corporate world as a lawyer. I wanted to give you the chance to comment on those two.
When I heard that, I work with lawyers, by the way, and so I know sometimes what that can be like. I mean, they do end up in these adversarial.
The great disclaimer, by the way.
However, they bring me in for jury selection and things like that, but I also work with the attorneys.
Okay.
And it's surprising to me how many attorneys are not good communicators, by the way, but I think they escalate the volume more than anything else. But when you look at what happens, and it's the dynamic, I think, that you're dealing with all the time, because they're in a dynamic that is very, very much adversarial in terms of there's another person involved, but they have to have some kind of sensitivity training that this is not something that goes on and carries on at work with your coworkers. And that's unfortunately what happens is coworkers end up bearing the brunt of what's happened to them in the workplace. So it's very difficult. But when I look at CEOs I've had a lot of CEOs that are bullies, and it's difficult with them because they don't see it. They just don't see what's happening. So I have to sit down with them and point it out and say, look at the behavior here. I mean, well, here's what I'm getting from other people, because generally, if I'm working with a CEO, I will do a 360. In other words, talk to everybody around them and figure out what's going on. Yeah. So that when I go to them, it's specifically, you're intimidating people. You can't do this. You're making people feel unimportant. So when they get that specific, then they can adjust their behavior. But it's behavior issues, and that's what they need to do.
It is.
So you need all kinds of opinions sometimes about people in the workplace, because I think someone mentioned that they got so fed up they left. Well, that's the problem. Most people, when they are bullied at work, they end up leaving. That's unfortunate, because it costs so much to the company, and it costs so much to lose somebody and then onboard somebody new into the same problem. So I think it's a huge issue in the corporate world today.
Dr. Jane, I wanted to bring you in to address Mo Doctor's issue, being led at an early age to stand up and fend for himself. Is that something that you see often?
I'm sorry, that he learned at an early age to stand up for himself?
Yeah, his dad said, stand up and give a bully his own medicine back.
Well, I think that standing up for yourself is important. Giving him his own medicine back is less effective than labeling his medicine and saying, you're bullying me, and I'm not going to allow that to happen.
Well,
I really think we need to put some labels on behavior that is troublesome.
Yeah.
And again, when we can put it in the first person, I feel really bullied. And if that doesn't work, then you're bullying me again.
Right.
And I'm not going to stand for it.
Good advice.
You know, the problem with the law firm is that I think it's helpful to tell the bully in your office that the client, and I'm assuming it's the client of the firm, that the client feels bullied. That may ease off somewhat. You're the one who's being bullied, but the client is getting it. You know, he may be getting it secondhand, but he's seeing a pattern of bullying in an arena where he is supposed to have equal rights, equal say, with the opposite party. So sometimes just calling a superior out on how what he's doing is affecting your client, your account, whatever it is you have in common.
Yeah, the trickle down, absolutely.
Is important.
Everyone, thank you. A quick recap. Tim Hart, one of our guest experts, president and CEO of Leading CEO, who deals with a lot with the corporate and executive training. Dr. Jane Adams, I wanted to mention that she wanted to offer an introductory coaching session for parents of grown kids whose relationships could use improvement. There are details available at her website, janeadams.com. You got in early to get your name. That's good. Good for you. And also for Dr. Jane, the most recent book, Boundary Issues, How to Get the Intimacy You Want and the Independence You Need in Life, Love, and Work. The book again, Boundary Issues. So thank you, both of you. I wanted to also thank Michael Panabianco, Chuck Herrick, our lawyer who dealt with it, Mo Doctor. Thank you, Maurice, for being part of the show. Nice to have you. Yes, Maurice Duncan, yes. And Heather Pierce, who was willing to share so much about her and her experience with her children, her older children. I wanted to say, America, we're here for you. We are. This is America Connects. I want to remind everyone that we're not here to fix the bullies in our world. We're just here to learn how to deal with them. And sometimes just putting a label on people makes it easier to deal with them. We're not here to fix people. It's how we react to people that is what we internalize and what we have to take responsibility for. So
I just want to stick in, Rob, that it's putting a label not on them, but on their feelings.
Yeah, they're right. Their behaviors and their feelings. I get that. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for the clarification. It's true. But it helps understand. And we don't have to internalize all those factors and take the responsibility for their actions. We often do because it's easier, but we don't. We just accept them for what they are, and voice your feeling, voice your disappointments. I think that's important as well. It's been a pleasure having all of you on my show. Thank you all of you for being here today and taking time out of your day It's been really an interesting show, and I hope those of you at home watching and listening that today you know more now about this topic than you did when you woke up this morning. It's something that we like to claim, that hopefully is a goal of mine and all of our panel members today. So, America, thank you for being part of our show. Our guests, thanks for being a part of America Next, and we are here for you, America. We really are. We care and we want this world to get better, and we can only do that with one of you each and every day, making things a little bit better for those around you. So again, I am Rob Dalton. This is America Connects. And remember, America, stay connected. Everybody have a great day and enjoy the rest of your life.